I was still wearing the black dress, the one with the tiny mother of pearl buttons he chose because it made me look respectable. When his brother Charles leaned across the ham, somebody brought and whispered in my ear like we were sharing a secret at church. So, did William ever change the deed? The funeral had ended only 4 hours earlier. The lilies on the casket were still fresh, and already they were measuring the curtains. I looked at Charles, 50, 8 years old, same weak chin as my husband, same fake, soft voice, and something inside my chest snapped clean in two. Because right then I understood. They all thought I was finished, not dead, just harmless, a little old lady in mourning who would sign anything they slid across the table with a shaky hand. They had no idea who they were talking to. My name is Evelyn Rose Harper. Most folks just called me Evie. I am 70, 4 years young, widowed exactly 9 days ago, and for 52 long years of marriage, there was one single door in my own house I was never, ever allowed to open. William called it my office. Every single night at 9 o'clock sharp, he would kiss my cheek, pat my hand like I was a good little dog, and say in that calm doctor voice, "That's my world, Evie. You have the rest of the house." I would smile and answer, "Yes, dear," because that is what good wives did in 1972. But on the 10th night, after they lowered him into the ground, when the last sympathy card was read and the last casserole dish washed and returned, I stood in that quiet hallway in my faded blue robe and fuzzy slippers, and I laid my hand on the brass knob that had been forbidden to me for 52 years. It was locked, of course. Dead men still like to have the last word. So the very next morning, I looked up locksmith near me, called the first name that popped up, and a nice young man named Tyler was at my door by noon. He never asked why a widow needed her dead husband's office opened. He just smiled, drilled the old lock, and 15 minutes later, the door swung free. 52 years of secrets undone in 15 quiet minutes. I stepped inside, and the air felt thick, like walking into a doctor's office nobody had opened since the 70s. Old paper, leather, dust, and something sharp, almost medicinal. Wall bookshelves, not one single novel, just row after row of identical black binders. Each one labeled in William's perfect doctor handwriting. Evelyn Medical Logs, 1970. 2 to 1980. Evelyn Behavioral Observations, 1980. 1 to 1990. Evelyn Correspondence, Intercepts, Evelyn Financial Compliance, Evelyn Daily Schedule, tracking my name. Over and over and over, like I was his lifelong research project, and he had just died before publishing the results. I reached for the closest binder with hands that would not stop trembling. The very first page was dated 3 weeks after our honeymoon. Subject displays resistance to suggested bedtime. Prescribed mild sedative in evening tea. Note, tears interpreted as emotional instability. I remembered that night clear as yesterday. I was 22, homesick, missing my mama. I cried into my pillow. William brought me a cup of chamomile and told me I was simply overtired. I opened another binder, hundreds of photographs, me sleeping, me hanging laundry on the line, me talking on the kitchen phone, shot from the backyard through the window. Every picture dated, timed, annotated in his red pen. Subject laughing with neighbor Mrs. Jenkins, monitor for external influence. My knees gave out. I sank into his big leather chair, the one that still carried the shape of him, and I whispered into the dusty silence, "William, what in heaven's name did you do to me?" I stood there in that forbidden room for what felt like hours, my hand still on that cold brass knob, trying to make my heart slow down because the binders weren't the worst of it. In the very center of the big oak desk sat one cream-colored envelope. My name written across the front in William's perfect doctor penmanship. Evelyn Rose Harper, to be opened upon my death. I knew his handwriting the way some women know their husbands breathing in the dark. I had seen it on birthday cards, on grocery lists, on every single prescription bottle he ever handed me. My fingers shook so badly I had to sit down in his chair to open it. Inside was not a love letter, not an apology, not even a goodbye. It was a typed list titled, "Instructions for Evelyn Grace Harper following my passing contact, my brother Charles, immediately regarding estate matters. Do not attempt to access this office without Charles present. Continue current medication regimen as prescribed. Avoid unnecessary stress. All major decisions to be approved by executor. There was no 'I love you.' There was no 'I'm proud of the life we built.' Just orders." Even from the grave, he was still telling me when to take my pills and when to breathe. I let the paper float to the floor like a dead leaf. Then I opened the top drawer. Neat rows of folders, exactly like patient charts at his old practice. I pulled one out at random. It was labeled, "Evelyn Medication Compliance, 1995 to 2005. Inside were pharmacy receipts and little handwritten notes in the margins. Subject resisted evening dose, claimed headache was nothing. Increased dosage the following week. Improved compliance noted. I remembered that headache. It was the night our daughter Laura called to say she was getting married in Seattle. I was so excited I forgot my pill. William brought me warm milk and told me I was getting worked up again. Another folder, Evelyn's Social Interactions 1980, ate a photograph of me laughing with my sister Helen at the county fair. Taken from across the parking lot with a zoom lens, red ink underneath, subject overly animated. Discouraged future unsupervised outings with H. Harper. I dropped the picture like it burned me, because I remembered that day too. William had suddenly decided he was too tired to go to the fair. He stayed home resting. All these years I thought he was napping. He was following me. I moved to the bookshelves like a sleepwalker. 1974, the year I wanted to go back to night school for my library degree. His note, subject displays unrealistic ambition, gently redirected. 1982, the year I asked if we could adopt a dog after both kids left for college. His note, subject emotionally fragile post-empty, nest, additional responsibility contraindicated. 2010, the year I mentioned maybe traveling to Ireland like I'd always dreamed. His note, subject exhibits flight of ideas thinking, increased monitoring advised. Every dream I ever had, every tiny spark of joy that wasn't about him. He wrote it down, diagnosed it, medicated it, buried it. I opened one more binder, thicker than the rest. The label made my blood turn to ice. Evelyn Declaration of Incapacity draft inside was a legal document, already signed by 2 doctors I barely remembered meeting, dated 6 months ago, stating that I, Evelyn Rose Harper, was suffering from progressive cognitive decline and emotional instability, and required immediate guardianship. There was even a sticky note in William's handwriting, file upon first sign of resistance or after my death, whichever comes first. He was planning to have me declared incompetent while I was still breathing. He died before he could finish the job. I sat in that leather chair until the sun went down, until the room grew so dark I couldn't see the labels anymore. And for the first time in 52 years, I did not take my evening pill. The very next morning, I did something I had not done since 1971. I opened the bathroom cabinet, took the orange prescription bottle with my name on it, the one that said, "Take one every evening for anxiety," and I poured every last pill into the toilet. I watched them swirl away like tiny white lies. Then I called the only person I knew who had never been afraid of William Harper, Margaret Ann Wilson, my best friend from library school. The one he called that loud woman who fills your head with nonsense. He had made me stop speaking to her 23 years ago. I still remembered the exact sentence he used. "Margaret is not a healthy influence, Evie. You get too excitable when you're around her." I found her number in my old address book. the one he never knew I kept hidden in the flower canister. She answered on the second ring. "Margaret," I said, and my voice cracked like thin ice. "It's Evelyn." There was a long silence. Then the most beautiful sound I had heard in decades, her crying my name like I had come back from the dead. An hour later, she was on my porch with a pan of cinnamon rolls and a bottle of red wine before noon. I led her straight to the office. She walked in, looked at the wall of binders labeled with my name, and whispered one word that made me feel seen for the first time in half a century. "Monster." We sat on the floor like we were 22 again, passing the wine bottle back and forth while I showed her the photographs, the logs, the incapacity papers. When she read the note about discouraging, unsupervised outings with her, she started laughing through her tears. "He was terrified of me," she said, tapping the page. "Not because I was loud, because I would have told you the truth the first time he tried to put you in a box." That afternoon, we made a plan. First, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Sarah Chen, the kind young woman doctor at the clinic who always asked how I was instead of telling me. Second, I called Judith Bell, the attorney Margaret found, the one whose website said specializing in elder financial abuse and coercive control. Third, I started a notebook of my own, bright red cover, big bold letters on the front, Evelyn Evidence 1920, 5 to present. Every night I wrote down what I remembered before the pills fogged it. Every dream he killed, every time he told me I was confused, when I was simply angry, every tear he labeled hormonal. By the end of the first week, I had filled 43 pages. Charles showed up on the 9th day after the funeral, unannounced, carrying a leather briefcase and that same oily smile. "Evelyn," he said through the screen door, "we really must discuss the estate." William was very clear. I opened the door just enough to look him in the eye. "Charles," I said, calm as Sunday morning, "William is dead, and I am done being clear for him. He tried to push past me. I did not move. I have power of attorney." He blustered. "The trust activates immediately." "No," I said. "What activates immediately is a lawsuit if you set one foot inside this house without my permission." His face went the color of boiled ham. "You're upset," he said. "You're not thinking straight." I smiled the first real smile I had felt in years. "That's the thing, Charles. For the first time in 52 years, I am thinking perfectly straight." I closed the door in his face, and for the first time since 1972, I turned the deadbolt myself. The hearing was set for a rainy Tuesday in early November. I walked into that courtroom wearing the soft, cream suit I bought the week before. William always said cream was too bold for a woman my age. I figured it was time to be bold. Judith Bell walked on my left, tall and sharp in her navy blazer. Margaret walked on my right, holding my hand like we were 20 again. Dr. Sarah Chen sat behind us in the gallery, ready to testify that every single diagnosis in those binders was medically baseless. Charles sat at the defendant's table looking smaller than I remembered. His lawyer kept loosening his tie like the room was getting hotter by the minute. The judge was a woman, Judge Marilyn Ortega. Silver hair, kind eyes, and a voice like warm tea when she said, "Mrs. Harper, you may speak whenever you're ready." I stood up slowly. My knees shook, but my voice did not, Your Honor. I began. I was married for 52 years to a man who kept a locked room in our house. Inside that room, he did not keep love letters or war medals or even a bottle of good scotch. He kept me, not my body. He kept my mind, my choices, my freedom. He kept them in black binders labeled with my name, like I was his lifelong science experiment. I held up the red notebook I had filled myself. This is my binder now. In it, I wrote down every dream he erased, every tear he called hysteria. Every single day he told me I was too fragile to be trusted with my own life. I opened to a page I had marked with a ribbon. June 17, 1974, our second wedding anniversary. I asked if we could drive to the coast just for the weekend. His note reads, "Subject exhibits unrealistic expectations. Gently redirected. Sedative administered." I thought he was being thoughtful because I fell asleep on the couch at 7 o'clock. He drugged me so I would stop wanting things he didn't want to give. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear Charles breathing through his mouth. I kept going. October 12th, 2004. I mentioned adopting a little dog after our youngest left for college. His note, emotional fragility noted. Additional responsibility contraindicated. I cried for 3 days. He told everyone I was going through the change again. I looked straight at Charles. "Your Honor, my husband died before he could file papers to have me declared incompetent. He left instructions for his brother to finish the job. Today, I am asking you to finish something different. I am asking you to declare that I was never incompetent. I was imprisoned, and today I am walking free." Judge Ortega removed her glasses. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steel. "Mrs. Harper, the court has reviewed the 563 pages of evidence you submitted. We have heard testimony from Dr. Chen that there is no medical basis for any of the so-called diagnoses. We have seen the photographs, the intercepted mail, the draft guardianship papers that were never filed because the architect died first." She looked at Charles like he was something stuck to her shoe. "The trust is dissolved effective immediately. The declaration of incapacity is stricken from the record as fraudulent. Full control of the estate is restored to Evelyn Rose Harper. And Mr. Charles Grace, you are hereby barred from any further involvement in Mrs. Harper's affairs." The gavel came down like church bells on Easter morning. Margaret squeezed my hand so hard I felt my bones creak. Judith Bell smiled the only smile I ever saw from her. Small, fierce, satisfied. Charles stood up, mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. Security walked him out before he found words. I did not cheer. I did not cry. I simply breathed out 2 years of someone else's air, and breathed in my own for the very first time. The house felt different the day after the hearing, not bigger, just mine. I walked from room to room touching things I had dusted for 2 years, but never truly owned. The blue willow teacups I bought on our honeymoon. The rocking chair my daddy made when I was born. The little brass key hook by the door where William used to hang his office key. Now empty and shining in the sunlight. I kept going back to that room. I had planned to turn it into a sewing room, paint it yellow, let the light pour in. But first I had to finish emptying it. That was when I found the second safe. It was smaller, hidden behind a false panel in the bottom drawer of the desk. I almost missed it. The combination was the same as the wall safe, 0617, our wedding date. Inside was only one thing. A single white envelope, heavier than paper, sealed with old-fashioned red wax. Across the front, in William's handwriting that I would know blindfolded, "For Evelyn, only if you ever find the courage to open every door I closed." My hands shook worse than the first day I stepped into that room. I carried the envelope to the kitchen, sat at the table where I had eaten 500,000 meals in silence, and I broke the seal. Inside were 2 sheets of thick cream paper, and a small brass key on a faded blue ribbon. The letter was handwritten, dated exactly 1 year before he died. "My dearest Evelyn, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have done the one thing I never believed you would do. You have opened every door I locked. I told myself the binders were for your protection. I told myself the pills were for your peace. I told myself the cameras, the notes, the rules were love in its strictest form. I lied. The truth is uglier than any diagnosis I ever wrote about you. I was afraid of you. From the very first day you walked down the aisle in that simple lace dress, eyes shining like you could see straight through every wall I ever built. I was terrified of the woman you were. You laughed too loud. You dreamed too big. You loved too freely. And I, a man who needed order above all things, could not bear the chaos of a wife who might one day decide she did not need me to manage her light. So I dimmed it, slowly, carefully, day by day, pill by pill, rule by rule. I built a perfect cage and called it marriage. I told myself when you stopped fighting, you were finally happy. I told myself when you stopped asking to travel, you had finally settled. I told myself when you stopped calling your friends, you had finally accepted that I was enough. I was wrong about everything. This key opens the bottom drawer of the cedar chest in the attic. Inside is every letter you ever wrote and never mailed. Every diary you hid, every plane ticket you bought and canceled because I made you feel too fragile to fly. They are all there, your voice, your fire, your wings. Take them back, Evelyn. Burn this letter if you want. Burn the binders. Burn my memory if it helps you breathe. But please, live the years I stole. Be loud again. Be bold again. Be the girl who once told me on our third date that she intended to see every ocean before she died. I was too much of a coward to walk beside her. Do not let my cowardice bury you too. With the only honest love I ever managed, William, I read it 3 times. Then I climbed the attic stairs for the first time in 20 years. The cedar chest was exactly where he said. The little brass key, slid in like it, had been waiting. Inside were hundreds of envelopes addressed in my own young handwriting. To Margaret, to my sister, to travel agencies, to universities. And on top, wrapped in the blue scarf I wore the day we got engaged, was the diary I started the week we married. The first line made me laugh and cry at the same time. Today I married the handsomest man in Indiana. Tomorrow I begin the adventure of a lifetime. I sat on the attic floor surrounded by pieces of the girl I used to be, and for the first time since 1972, I did not feel old. I felt like I had just woken up. I burned the binders on the first warm Saturday in April. Margaret brought the metal trash barrel from her garage. My granddaughter Nora, 17, fierce and already taller than me, carried the boxes. We stacked them like a funeral pyre in the backyard, while the birds sang like it was Easter morning. One by one, we fed them to the flames. 1970, 4 went up first, then 1980, 2. Then every year he labeled, measured, and medicated me into silence. The smoke smelled like old secrets finally set free. When the last binder curled black and fell to ash, Nora asked Grandma, "Do you feel different?" I looked at the sky so wide, so blue, and answered with the first completely honest sentence I had spoken in 52 years. I feel like I just got born again at 74. That summer, I did everything the binders said I was too fragile to do. I flew to Ireland with Margaret sat in the window seat the whole way and cried over the Atlantic because I finally could. I adopted a scruffy little rescue dog named Liberty. She sleeps on my bed now and snores louder than William ever did. I started a little Thurs, day-night group at the library called Opening Locked Doors. 12, sometimes 15 women show up. We drink tea, we cry, we laugh, and we hand each other the courage we were told we never had. In September, I turned 75. I threw the party myself in the backyard where the binders burned. White lights in the trees, Nora's playlist, Margaret's famous cinnamon rolls, and a 3-tiered chocolate cake that said in bright red letters, "Happy birthday to the girl who finally came home." Charles never showed his face again. The money is mine, the house is mine, the days are mine. And every night before I go to sleep, no pills, no locked doors. I open the attic cedar chest, take out one of the letters young Evie never mailed, and I read it out loud to Liberty. Sometimes it is a letter to Paris. Sometimes it is a love note to a boy who is long gone. Sometimes it is just a grocery list with the words "Be brave" written in the margin. And every single time I finish reading, I whisper to the quiet room, "I'm here, darling. I finally came back for you." My dear friend, if you are watching this and something in your heart just cracked open, if there is a door you have been told never to touch, if there is a voice in your life that keeps saying you're too old, too tired, too confused, Listen to an old woman who learned the hard way. The key has always been in your hand. Turn it. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the little bell so we can sit together again real soon. And tell me down in the comments, where in the world are you watching from tonight? I read every single one, and I can't wait. See your little town light up my screen. God bless you, sweet friend. Now go open a door you were told to leave closed. I promise, the light on the other side is worth it.